All right, we're going to find ourselves on page Kuf Lamed. That's a Zion. Kuf Lamed Zion. And we're reading across the top, trying to get an idea what's going on over here. So here's a little blurb at the top. He says, Tam Shemitzrayim Nikros Eretz Cham, V'chein Avi Mitzrayim Nikra Cham. So we're going to get that information there. He said, because this is the reason why. Hine the Hioski Hine Hatzewufim Shachas Chalasam B'shtei Osius Mi. Let's talk about the portions of this concept we're talking about, which could divide. Okay, anyway, let's go on. So, Ki Dalit Serufim Maschilim Ba'ov Yud. There are 24 Serufim of the name Elokim that have to do with one of the letters, which is the letter Yud. God Serufim Maschilim Ba'os Mem. That makes 48. Shnehim Hem Mem Ches, which is 48 Serufim. This is how 50 becomes 48. So it's just 24 each letter. He said, "L'chem benikra eretz Mitzrayim al shem eretz Cham, k'moshe amach hakasav v'niflos be'eretz Cham al achiyosem yonkim mum." Because they are able to feed off of the mem ches serufim and niskarim, what have to do with the last two letters of the name Elokim. Gam zehu so Cham. This is also the concept Cham. Bein Noach Avi Mitzrayim, this is the same lineage, that they have the ability. I was saying he has the ability to get to that place in the neck, to be able to hold on to that and build up the klipa, or feed off of the shefa that is lost over there. Kamosha Amar, like it says like this, Akasav B'nei Cham Kush u'Mitzrayim, and he goes through, counts them up. V'nei Paro Harasha Ho Yechoshik Ki Kevin Zair Anpin Hanikra Bara Bukhra, because he's called the firstborn son. He says Chaza his Alim Toch Iba Beso, the Iver that he went and he hid. So he said B'Shacham of Shachaz V'Shalom Lo Yachzer the Kadmusa, the his Galus that says the Chutz. So maybe God forbid it should go back to where it was at the beginning, to be able to reveal itself l'chutz b'bet and ima outside of the bechem law. Vayedei came gam b'nei Yisrael tartonim anikra Yisrael al shemo shel Zair Anpin, and they're called this because, as we said before, it represents the mochin, the godless. I think he said in Zair Anpin anikra Yisrael, which is also called by the name Yisrael. Gam hem yisha'arachu b'galus toch Mitzrayim. So therefore, they're also going to be in galus, just like the Israel above is hiding. So the Jewish people will wind up in exile, where they are hidden from, I guess, the flow of light of God. And that's because of that, it appears that it has no power, no reality anymore. He sent this phrase, Ko Amar Hashem B'ni B'churi Yisrael. He referred to the Jewish people as my son, my firstborn. L'rmos Alcha Bein B'chor Ha'elyon Nikra Yisrael, and that's a reference to that Bein B'chor, which we said is Yisrael above, which is Zair Anpin. Ki Yum Kayim V'lo Nizbato Chas V'sholem, because it's still there, but it was not nullified, God forbid. V'hodia Ki lefi shekafar b'mitziuso l'chein yihya ne'enhesh mida keneged mida. So since Paro, I think you're talking about Paro, he denied that was a reality that was hidden and that was going to come first. So therefore he was punished, mida keneged mida b'makas b'choros, that since he really denied the reality of the Bechor Yisrael, which is the highest level, so therefore he was smitten in the same way with the Makas Bechoros. The fee Shakafer Bebein HaBechor HaElyon Yisbarach, because Yudke Vavke, that name, he denied it. B'zecher v'masha Amar Kosev. So this is what the pasuk says, V'imoin Ata Shaleach. The pasuk said, if you hold back from sending, Yanochi Horeg Bincha B'chorecha, I'm going to kill your son, your firstborn. So he said, V'zecher v'masha Amar Kosev. This is what the pasuk says. that when your son asks you tomorrow, and he says, this ben down below, which we are like a physical manifestation of that Bechor up above in the world of Atzilus. Who Asher Yishalcha, this is what should ask you, Shailazu, this question. So Yan Olov no Geyazucha Shaila, because of this, this is the Shaila goes Levki, Ki Bo Hoya Rotze Paroch Lechforbo, because it's that name that Paro wanted to deny its existence, La'afria, and hold back the Jewish people, Begalus Tachas Rishusa, that's what he wanted, like that. So he says, now let's go v'nachso the Inyan Rishon. Let's go back to the first thing that we were talking about. Kigalas Mitzrayim Sovav al Shnei Kotomim, two different poles. Is a Rishon who Inyan Yisrael ha'elyon Zair Anpin Shachaza Dekana Bezod ha'Iver, who went back, entered into the state of embryonic stage. Bebechinat Tlas Klilin Betlas, where he go tlas, he says that they that's the fold. They fold themselves, it folds itself up. For who atzbo inyan galus Yisrael, so that itself, the fact that Zair Anpin went into that position, that is the definition of the galus Yisrael, the tachton tot Mitzrayim. Vasheni, who for the second part is ki machmas aliyaso lamala, because of the fact that he went up Kenisker, he folded himself up. So therefore the spread of the 5 chasadim, which builds Zair Anpin, stopped. The chasadim is pasha b'shisha kitzvos kanoda, which spread into the 6 corners of Zair Anpin. And they go back into their root, which is at the Moach Hadash b'makom haGoron Shabo, into the place which is the Gorom. So Sham who's siyum Yisod the Ima, because in the Gorom is where the Yisod of Ima stops, is of Shabbatoch Zair Anpin Kanoda. B'Sham, in that place, B'Gorom. So it's interesting. The Gorom is where sound emanates from. So over there in the Garam, Ku Achisis Klipis Mitzrayim, that is the place where Mitzrayim has an ability to be able to feed off of. Now, what is it feeding off of? It's feeding off of Carrie. That's really what he's talking about. He said that the power of the spilled seed, which is really what would you call sexual, I don't know the right word for this, is perversion, or I don't know if it's exactly perversion, but it is to a certain extent. So it's really perverting everything in the wrong way. That's where they get their strength. That's what I'm trying to say. So Anpin Kanoida Bisham Bulgar, in that place, who Jesus Klipis Mitzrayim, that's where they have this ability, or they were able to get a hold of this. Shu Makam Sar Kumavur Etzleno, which is a very narrow place. That's the place of the neck, the garganta, which is where the sound comes from. So what's in the Moach Hadas was not able to shine. It was always referring to the Zair Anpin. So Zair Anpin has really no energy to be able to do anything. But the only thing that is able to shine is the acharayim, that is the levush of the yesod of ima that cover over these chasadim and these gevuros, which we know shehem misared damim, which are revuas of the name Akia aniskar la'el. Shnei inyanim elu hemachuzim yachad. There is a lot of noise at the other end of on your end. Let me call you back and see if I can get it cleared. Okay, how do I do this? What's happening? Yeah. Okay, got you. Okay, here we go back again. The Ima, so we're on page Kuf Mem, was that a Mem? Kuf Mem Tes. The Ima Shehem Sarah Domim and its Karim Lael, those are those revuas that we talked about. That's all that is there shining into Zair Anpin. Shnei Inyanim Elokim Bechuzim Yachad. There are two things here that are joined together. Kitam Hatachton Gorim El Yona, because he means to say that what you're doing down below has a lot to do with going up and up, what's going on up above. So we understand it's a concept of the attachment between here and the origin of all things. Now, what was I going to say? So going on, I forgot what I was going to say, but what I was trying to do is tie this on to what his original premise is that the Zera L'Batola that came out of the Dor Mabul came from Adam Arishon, the Lamora Mabul, and the Dor of Bavel. He's a Floga, they call it. He says that these accumulated, these lost soul, lost neshamos, they accumulated into the Jewish people. Now, which are just becoming a people over here. So let's see, that's the sequence. So that's the reason why it had to go into that situation. So now going on, reading the top again, just reading across, getting the idea of so he says, and I will pass over to you, and I will see you wallowing in your blood. According to the wallowing, mispossesses is wallowing, according to the art scroll. The reason why are you wallowing in this blood? Now we understand the word blood is dam. It's a gematria 44, which is the revuah of Ekia. So it says, why are you and what happens is, as a result of that, everything gets very difficult. You have to do all these different kinds of works. Kasha is a very difficult one, b'chomer, and working with clay and with bricks. Hu b'sivas damayach. This is because of your blood. What's that about? Ratza lomar. Ki b'sivas eilo rasara damim. Because of these 10 damim. Shehem meirin and mispashtim b'Zair Anpin. So therefore there is ability, the other side, to be able to get into them and to get a hold of them. So again, understand that we're talking about this concept of the Shvichus Zera V'Levatala that is resting in some way of those neshamos are manifest in the Jewish people in some way. So therefore we became indentured to it. He said because they're able to feed off of the damim. So in order to fix this, so therefore it says this phrase, and to say to you, in your blood is my life, is life. That's what it sounds like. Because in the place of those that blood that we're talking about, that because of the fact that that's all there is, apparently he's saying that if it was possible that this was able to turn into an ekia, then the ekia comes from Ima, probably it would knock out the klipos. But since it's not that, it's only the lavush, it's not the essence of the light itself. So therefore, but it must have some DNA or qualities that the klipa can get a hold of. Nishta abed yimshikul l'chol chayim al yonis. So because of this, you're going to get the upper level of light. What does this mean? Shehu inyan leidas Zair Anpin v'hisgalusa. Because of this situation, we're going to have to bear out. We're going to have to give birth to Zair Anpin. Because that's what happens when things get so bad like that, and so it eventually draws up, I guess, Mayim Nukvin to the extent that actually Zair Anpin is born again. Shehem Sod Ekya Havaya Ekya. This is the concept of these three names. So this is Kambavur B'Tzleinu Al Yedei Chaim Elu Teitze Minagalos, because through this life force, which is the rebirth of Zair Anpin, or the rebirth, we'll call it that. Zair Anpin Elu Teitze Minagalos, that brings the Jewish people out of Galus. So since there's two different types of dam tohor v'dam tameh, became kafel v'omer shtei pamim b'damaya chayi, because it said b'damaya chayi, that your life force will come from this blood. So a v'gam nirmaz b'mida b'damayach Ki'ilu Omer Beis Damayach. It's even if it said that it's like plural. V'da. He says like this. V'aki Elu Atzban Heim Sod Mash Omer Zechon V'rocha. So they themselves are what the rabbi says. Shehem Shnei Damim Dam Pesach V'dam Mila. Now he's changes around a little bit, and he changes what we were saying. B'damayach Ayi. He says the two types of blood. He didn't say that there's blood tahor and there's blood tameh. He said there's two types of blood. One is called the Dam Pesach, and the other one is Dam Mila. So this is going far afield, but here he goes. Dam Mila Haim Dam Tohor. So the Dam of Mila, he says, is a pure blood. A Tam Tohor, what is the right word for Tohor? Tohor. Ki Haim Min Chasadim, because they come from Chasadim. That's Dam of the bris. It's coming from there. Hamizgalim b'puma de'amach yisod de'chura. So these chasadim, where are they found? They're found at the opening of the male organ, which is where the bris takes place. Yisod de'chura, at the yisod of the male. V'heim pesach, and period. V'dam pesach, he says v'dam pesach hu keneged the gevur shehem b'nukva keneged, which are found in the nukva. Kiso the Pesach, and this is an idea that could be expanded, I think. However, he said Kiso the Pesach who benukva keniska b'sefer hazohar l'si v'zucha v'tiknach hamasadrim ha'agada. So therefore, it was built into those who organized the Agada. Pasuk zeh be'emsa seder chagalus leil Pesach. Now, I made a note here to look at this. The SHAAR HAKAVANOT Mavur down below, and we'll look at it right now. He says, so this is the Emsa Seder Hagalus Leil Pesach. So Be'emsa Seder Haggadah, Leil Pesach. He said, B'tevis mispossesses b'damayach. That phrase, that you'll be wallowing in this blood. Once again, this blood is the blood of the 44 of the 10 different types of dam. He says, Nirmaz Sibas Hashivod Shehoisa Machmas Ayinika Shalakitzonim. So we're talking about the cause of the slavery, which took place as a result of the Yanika Shalakitzonim Mishnei Minidomim, the two different types of blood, Shehem Levush Mochim Shehem Badas, which are the Levushim, because they're able to get energy from that. That energy is exactly what they're looking for, and they're able to grow from it. Uba b'tevis chai. But when you get to the word chai, nirmez haderek sheboch v'choisach ha'geula, it's a reference to the derech in which the redemption will come. Dahainu ayidecha meshachas hamochen degadlus. So there we say like this, by way of the streaming of the meshachas degadlus, which is the birth of this beginning of the birth of Zair Anpin. Shehem Achaim Shal Zair Anpin, which refers to the life force coming into Zair Anpin. V'shtei Pamim Shene'ema B'damayach, the two times that it said B'damayach Hayi, or B'shmuas Beis Damayach, of the implication of the two bloods. Nirmas is Pashtu Shnei Mini Damim B'chodesh. It's really a reference, this brother Hayi, is to let you know that it's coming back again. It's Shnei Mini Damayach B'chadash. They're going to come out there. B'shisha Ketzvos to Zair Anpin. They're going to appear in Zair Anpin. That is the 10 different types of blood. He says the two different types of blood, which are 10 altogether, will wind up going into the 5 Ketzvos, or the 6 Ketzvos of Zair Anpin, connected to Dam Pesach v'Dam Mila. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Let's go on. Nimsa. So he said Nims like this. Ki inyan geulas mitzrayim koisa al yedecha b'neis gadol ma'od. So that inyan. B'zecha v'inyan gedulas nes yitzias mitzrayim. So this is the inyan of the powerful power, the greatness, or the gedulas, the greatness of the nes of going out of Mitzrayim. He says, Kihine, he says, Am Mitzrayim b'paro, Hoya kol kach lechuzin the misharshin the yanuk medadasa elyon the Zair Anpin, so they're able to take those pasulas, which you understand is not the shefa that's coming out of the spilled seed that is located in that place. Achigaram lachsor Zair Anpin besod the ivor besod tlas klila betlas. They got a hold of it so badly that's what happened to it. So he shehi bechinas betachlis amiut vagiroyim, and this is for the purpose of the limiting, the lessening. She'ain lamata b'mena, there's nothing lower than that. So from the situation where Zair Anpin is all folded up, he has to come back, bring birth to Zair Anpin again. So he says that in other words, to grow him up to a place where he's actually ultimately get the full mochin, the gedula that he can reach. And this reason this is the purpose of it, to be able to be besata the chitzon, that is the rebirth of Zair Anpin. And Misham Machmas Tokif or Hagodol Ahu V'ayadei Kain Yetzim in the Galos, and this is the way coming out of Galos. So now we have an overview of the first drush. It's one of the easier drush. I think it was one of the easier ones. I think we're going to see, God willing. So let's go to drush number bet, drush Pesach drush bet. He said, "Be'inyan tokef agdolos Zair Anpin b'yitzias Mitzrayim," the power of the growth of Zair Anpin. Bisman hakadnus. So he writes in this little print. He says, at the time of kadnus, nikarim b'Zair Anpin rak levushi hamochim shehem Elokim. The only thing you see there in kadnus at that time is levushim of the Elokim, which levushim of the mochim, which is an Elokim. Now, before we were saying the mochim, those are the mochim. We were saying the chasadim and the gevuros have a revu of ekya. Over here, he says that in Zair Anpin now, we're talking about the levushim of the mochim that are coming to Zair Anpin. Those are Elokims in the time of Katniss. So now we're going to go through some of these ideas, try to set ourselves up for more understanding later on. But the chida nakdim dama achas be'inyan seder hagdala Zair Anpin. Let me tell you a principle that we have to learn first. He says, "Da ki kashinoded Zair Anpin, when Zair Anpin is born, oz hu zaman kadnuso ate yoso godol ben shlosh esrei shanim, until he reaches the age of 13. Of his mana katna, so there this period of time from birth until 13." Hazeh, Vada sheyesh lo gam came mochin the katnas, but it's not that he has no mochin; he has what's called mochin the katnas, keniska the el, and which we understand, and we've heard this before. V'hamochin ma'elor bisman katnas, hem bepechidas halevushim v'rakelim shal netzachod yisod de'ima. Now let's see this. These are the levushim. Let me see if I get this right. They're the levushim and the kalim. I guess they mean to say, of these three sephiros, these are the levushim, and that's the outside part of the netzachod yisod avima of her nai. Of the sochim is lavshim, and inside of those levushim, halevushim shal netzach and hod yisod the abba. So inside of them is the yisod of abba, the same thing that abba rides inside of ima. They're riding together. So he says, "V'kol elo niknasim toch Zair Anpin." So all of these go into Zair Anpin besod the mochin de katnas, in the secret of what we call mochin de katnas. Ad yusach begoda ben shlosh esrei shanim b'mala, until he reaches 13 years and upwards. V'am the bechinas of levushim and iskarim. So now we're talking about the levushim for the mochin of katnas of Zair Anpin. So he said, "V'amna bechinas of levushim and iskarim the netzachod yisod of the nai the eva bismana katnas heim shema shel Elokim." So in other words, it's not a levush like we put on; it's 5 letters. The letters of the name Elokim. That's the levush of the mochin de katnas. Because Bina is called by the name Elokim. And he says the bechinas acharayim shall netzachod yisod the ima, and particularly when you're talking about the acharayim of the netzachod and yisod of ima, shehem chalavushim by yosach hitzonim, which are the lavushim, which are the most outside part, shall netzachod yisod the ima. Now let me see. Go on. Vehem bechinas amochim the katna. So this is what we're talking about. There are mochin inside of them, and they are mochin the katnas. Levisha netzachod yisod the abba rababara meluvashim b'toch netzachod yisod the ima. They're inside and they match inside, but it's benimi to ima. Ve'enim izgalim b'Zair Anpin. They're not revealed in Zair Anpin ela ayidera b'bina, only through the fact that bina comes into Zair Anpin. V'cheim gam halavushim the netzachod yisod the abba. So therefore, the same thing in netzachod the abba. Heim nekroim mochin the Elokim al shem ima v'habinze. Now there might have been more to be said about that. He says that how does Abba become, the Mochim are going to be the same since he rides inside of her and they're like one. I guess they're sharing it together. That is the same concept of Elokim. V'amnam, begadlus the Zair Anpin, when Zair Anpin grows, gets Mochim to godless. Az halavusha the netzachod yisod the ima heim yosef panimium. They're more panimi. So it changed from an Elokim, which is the name of the Mochin the Katnas that come from Ima, that go into Zair Anpin, but now it's changing. And as a result of that, it changes the name Ekya, Kenizka the El, Ki b'mor chadas, belvad shuku ha-yisod the Ima, so in ba, the das. Mor chadas is Zair Anpin. Besides the fact that Shuhu HaYisod the Ima, that is also the same place as the Yisod the Ima, Yesha Saradamin, there were 10 damin. We've been through this before. V'heim Eser Shemos Ekya, so the Acharayim Shalachem, so this is the Revuah of Ekya. V'avderik Zechab Gam Hanetzav Hod Yehiyah B'bechinas Ekya, so therefore in godless, there are also going to be Ekyas. V'nimsa, so it comes out like this. Kimashi is boyer la'el, what was explained above, shebegalas Mitzrayim koyim izgala mesachodamim elo. But in the Megalas Mitzrayim, there's a revelation over there of these 10 damim now. Hine heim bechinas halavushim shebizman godless, but they're actually the concept of the levushim that took place at the time of godless. Now we're talking about. Okay, so let's just see what he talks. It sounds like when we come into Mitzrayim, there is some kind of that we're associated with mochin the godless. Ki bizman hakatnos heim levushim and nekroim Elokim. So he's pointing out is that the acharayim of Ekya is now in this place at the time of godless. And let me read this again. Ki bizman hakatnos. It's not katnos because you're not going to generate the levush, the revuah of Ekya. Heim levushim and nekroim Elokim, ki bebina b'yei shem Ekya, because in Bina you have an Ekya, but you also have the shem Elokim k'naida. So he said that you could see in the Eitz Chaim. So he said, let's go on. V'achakach bazaman gadlus Zair Anpin. So now comes the time of the growth of Zair Anpin gadlus. V'hu ben shlosh esrei shanim, when he reaches the age of 13 years. V'neknasim bo mamash bechinas mochin panimium. The havayas now is coming in mochin panimium. These mochin panimium are havayas. Toka levusha de netzachod yisod the ima. They're inside of the levushim of the nai of ima. Bechinas shemos ekya keniska la'el, and they're the aspect of these ekyas. Now, I am a little confused about the havayas and the ekyas. So let's see how it goes. Like in the Rishash. And this always makes me wonder about this, that you have first, we have the pair of Havaya Ekya. So first, in the Mochin, when it shows that the Mochin are flowing, or the Oros are flowing, it shows you the Or Makif, which is an Ekya, and a For Panimi, which is the Havaya. Now, he calls it a Makif, so I'm thinking that he means that maybe it doesn't mean Makif, it says Makif. Maybe it doesn't mean that. Maybe it means Kitsonius, or it means the Kli, or something like that. That would make easier sense to me. Right now that it's called a Makif, okay. Anyway, we're trying to read about that. V'chein al derek zecha b'mochin panimim the chavayis, Toch levushin de netzachod yisod the Abba are inside. The same thing that happens in Ima is happening in Abba. Ve'elokim bebechinat tselem. This is the concept that we could look into more, but we're not. The tselem v'hem os tzadik tselem, and they represent the os tzadik tselem. That is, that the nai enters into Zair Anpin, the nai of Ima, and that's the concept of the sadi of tselem. So he says, Kamavur Etzleinu, we have discussed this before, he says. So then you got to 13 years of age. In the 7 next years, Niknasim Shiva Mekifim Demochin the Godless. So now that's another thing to look into, but he says that enter into Zair Anpin, 7 Mekifim Demochin the Godless. Now I'm not familiar with the concept of the 7 Mekifim. I know there's 2 Mekifim. Some places would say there's 5 Mekifim, but here he says that there's 7 of them. Okay, we're going on. V'heim shtei osius lamed and mem. So if you saw them in Mispar Cotton, which is what I thought he was going to do, he would say that one is a 3 and the other one is a 4, makes 7. So he's v'heim shtei osius lamed mem d'tzelem. They refer shecheshbonim sheva, which have a count of 7. Now I made a note here to look down below, so let's look down below. In the light print, he says like this, and we got through the count of 7. So they're clothed in the 7 upper spheres of Ima. That's the concept of the 7. What are they? Ima, in this case, Ima is called Tavuna. He's going to explain a little bit more about Ima and Tavuna. Makif Rishon mislavish b'shlosh spheres chesed gevur teferes the Ima. So the first Makif, he says Makif, mislavish b'shlosh spheres chesed gevur teferes the Ima. Now let's just go over the words again. He says the Makif Rishon, which is the Makif for Zair Anpin. Mislavish is clothed in the spheres chesed gevur teferes the Ima. That's the Lamed Tzelem. So therefore it has a reference to the Amid because it's a 3. And 3 is also, times 10 is 30. That's the Lamed Tzelem. A Makif Sheni, so then the higher Makif, the second one, Mislavish ba'arba spheres keser choch b'biniv das the Ima. And Mispar Katan, it comes out to before again. So therefore it's a reference to the letter Mem, which is really 4 times 10. We have all that in the Drush Tzelem, and there's a little bit more on it. Okay, then after all of this coming into Zair Anpin, let's go over here. Zair Anpin hu ben esrim shana gemurim. So when all of those 7 makifim, there's a makif for each one of these places, I guess he's saying. Because what's bothering me over here is there are 2 makifim, right? There's the lamed and the mem. But he calls them, or the language that the Rav used, he said that there are 7 makifim, which is 3 from the lamed and 4 from the mem. So he said, V'oz, Zair Anpin, hu ben esrim shana gemurim. So when all of these makifim are shining either into Zair Anpin or shining outside onto Zair Anpin, he says that's when Zair Anpin is 20 years old. V'yochol lisach v'litem b'nikse aviv afilu b'kakaos. It's a den over there. Yes, that Baba Basra. Now let's see what else did I want to say about this. Okay, so I'll just keep going because I can't remember for 2 seconds what I'm thinking. Maybe come back. They're not just one bechina. Shnechem nekroim zman gadlus rishon, and 2 of them, and we're going to go over this idea, which we know that in Sphira is going to be something we could maybe plug into. He says, Rak bechina achas of shnechem nekroim zman gadlus rishon, but the 2 of them together are called by the name gadlus rishon. V'la inyan hu kamash anoda, like we know like this. Inyan ima yulod hanachlechas t'shnei bechinos bina utzavuna. So let's go back to that idea. Ki min achaz of the matach nikra parts of tavuna. It's called parts of tavuna, which is the part of Abba Ve'ima that really goes into Zair Anpin. From down below, it's called from the chaza, it's called tavuna. Here, it's called bina. Tavuna is really a separate part. Bina is also they're separate. Parts of echad, but if you put them together, they make one parts of shalom kanisker. The nikra parts of echad, the ima yilah, and then it's called one parts of, and it refers to ima yilah. All of those words going together. So now we're talking about mochim that going into Zair Anpin, the nai. So let me start again. Umakifim the ima, and all together with the makifim of the ima. Shalokech Zair Anpin begadlusa, that Zair Anpin grows into, he receives them as he becomes greater. Hiyos ben shlosh esrei ad hiyos ben esrim shana. So now he has all of these malchim. He has the 7 makifim. That's the way they counted it up, which are actually 7 spheros of bina. Who bebechinas are called parts of tavuna. It's like the concept of the entire parts of a tavuna. So this is the way he says this. Instead of saying it that ima comes into Zair Anpin, he says, which is the same thing because it's a tandem kind of situation. He goes up. So he reaches up and she comes in. It's like they meet together. That's in my mind. Netzachod Yisod, the ima mochim penimim shabasochim, together with the mochim penimim that are inside of them. V'naasebel mochim penimim, so it makes it mochim penimim in zvichiyosa ben shlosh esrei shana, and that's what becomes in to Zair Anpin. That's the mochim that are coming from tavuna. The same thing, and this goes on when he's 13. Now you count the next 7 years. Lokech machzis tachton shal teferes de'ima. He takes first of all the lower half of the teferes de'ima, ima mochim shabo, v'na'aseh ben mochim makifim abo, mochim makifim, and they become mochim makifim. Let me read it again so we understand, because I'm thinking of going back to the thought that I had that I couldn't remember. He said, but I don't remember it again, so let's go back on. V'na'aseh mochim penimi b'hiyoseh ben shlosh esrei shana. So now he has mochim penimim coming from tavuna. He takes the lower half of teferes de'ima, ima mochim shabo, with it together with the mochim that are inside of it, and asibel mochim makifim, and they became makifim. So this is a level of light that is too great to go into Zair Anpin. It stays on the outside of Zair Anpin and shines at Zair Anpin. So it comes out like this, that these concepts, the lamed and the mem detzalim, heim shir shnei shlishim tachtonu to teferes de'ima, they can incorporate the lower 2/3 of the teferes of ima. And when that happens, and the lamed and the mem have come in, and all of this are shining now on Zair Anpin, it's on the lower 2/3 of his. That's from the chaz alamata. The nimsek kikuvar lokach, called parts of a tavuna kula. So at this point, he's completely received all of the parts of a tavuna. Rak machzis parts of ima, but it's only, he said what he calls 2/3 is really a half. So he said we could call it a half. Parts of ima yiloch bilvad kanisker, but that's all he has is the lower half. But noida, so it's known like this. So that's what happens when you're 13, and it runs like that up until you get to the point of 20 years old. V'noda, so it's known like this. Ki kamosha ima yiloch nechlecha the shnei partzufim bina tavuna. So we know that she's divided into 2 like that. Came Abba Yiloh nechloch al derek zeh. Abba Yiloh is divided in the same way. Mamish. The shnei partzufim chochma yisrael chochma, two partzufim. One's called chochma, and the other one's called Yisrael Saba. V'hidach kamosha lokach Zair Anpin b'bein shlosh esrei shana. What he receives at 13. Ben Esri Mochim until he reaches 20. He's receiving Mochim the Imach Benimim and Makifim, but parts of the Tavuna, that's all coming from parts of Tavuna. He said, and then rock machzis parts of the ima, which is only really a half of the parts of the ima. What happened about the other part? Mokain lokok gam came mochin the abba benima. So the same thing is happening at the same time. The mochin are in abba because he's inside of ima. The makifim the parts of Yisrael Saba, which is now called the parts of Yisrael Saba, which is the lower parts of Eshachakula, and Nenu Rak Machzis parts of the Abba, which is only half of the parts of Abba. So he's a Nimsa, so it comes out like this. Kibakatnus, that is in Katnus of the Zair Anpin. Before Zair Anpin is, and I know it's metaphorically 13 years old, Lokach mochem penimim the mekifim mitzad hitzoni Yisrael Sabatavuna. He's getting his mochem penimim and his mochem makifim from Yisrael Sabatavuna, from the lower parts of V'gadlusa lokach mochem penimim the mekifim mitzad penimim Yisrael Sabatavuna. So as he grows, that's where he gets the mochem penimim and the mekifim. V'achakach hoises Zair Anpin the bechinas katnas begadlus acherim. So now he's going to go through another system, another process. It's going to be a katnas, and then a gadlus, a different kind of katnas, yoser al yonim, which could become from a higher level. Parts of chachma bebina. This is referring to the parts of chachma bebina. That is, he means up above, above v'im eloyin. Shehem chetzaim el yonim shall parts of Abba v'ima mechachaz shalachem alamala. So it's the upper half of the parts of Abba v'ima. That shining is going to be shining on Zair Anpin, and he's going to say v'lechein. So therefore, hakatnas v'chagadla b'shona anach v'mechanim mosacha v'korim mosacha v'netzach hod yisod the Abba v'ima. So he said, let me see, he says, wait a minute, he said, didn't say what I thought he was going to say. V'lechein hakatas hagadlos arishonim, this katlas and gadlos for the first part, anim mechanim mosacha v'korim mosacha v'netzach hod yisod the Abba v'ima, we call them by that name. V'hakatas v'chagadla hashniya, anim mechanim korim mosacha v'bechinis chesed gevura teferes the Abba v'ima, we call them the chagat of Abba v'ima. He said the lefi shecha chachma of bina, because the chachma of bina heim min achaza the abba v'ima lamala. They only go from the chachma b'bina the abba lamala. Chashech b'sham kul b'chinas chesed gevur teferes shalachem. This is where you find their chagat. That's the upper third. So where are we going here? V'nimsaki acher esrim shana. So after you got, now you're 20 years old. You have all these makifim from the lower, but they're all the lower half of the light that's coming from Ima. Choser Zair Anpin la'alos aliyah acheres. So a Zair Anpin is going to wind up moving up to a different level, or it means that, okay, this is the way they talk about it. Now they're no longer talking about, which I was trying to say, that Ima is in, that Ima goes inside a Zair Anpin, but rather he uses the phrase that Zair Anpin rises up to the level of one half of the level to receive the light of one half of Ima. So he says, let me go back. V'nimsaki acher esrim shana choizu Zair Anpin la'alos aliyah acheres. V'lokeach chitzonius abba v'ima chachma b'bina. He receives the chitzonius of the chachma b'bina, the abba v'ima. It's at a higher level. Besod mochim pnimim makifim. He gets also the pnimim and the makifim. V'oz nikra katnu sheni the Zair Anpin. Now I missed that a little bit, so let me just read it again. So he said, "V'nimsaki acher esrim shana choser Zair Anpin la'alos aliyah acher v'lokeach chitzonius abba v'ima chachma b'bina," and he's able to receive from that level. Besod mochim pnimim the makifim v'oz nikra katnu sheni. So he's able to go up to that level, but this is still the level of katnus, the Zair Anpin. V'acher kach choser la'alos od, but then he goes higher. V'lokeach pnimius chachma b'bina b'sod mochim, but he gets the chachma b'bina sod mochim pnimim and makivim. V'az nikra gadlu sheni Zair Anpin. He goes to a higher level, and he gets from the. Let me just look back at it again. See if v'lokeach pnimius chachma b'bina. He gets the pnimius. So before he had the chitzonius, now he has the pnimius. This is the higher level or the deeper level. So there are two different types of katnus here. Shnei mini gadlus. So one has to do with what's going on with Yisrael Savatavuna, those two together, the male and the female that way. And the other one has to do with Chochmah Bina, also in Chochmah Bina. V'kulam einam rak shnei partsufim the Abba ve'imba, but they really boil it down to the two partsufim that are found in, or maybe he means of Abba ve'imba. Zair Anpin and Nikrach beben b'chor yorish makum Abba ve'imba chayonim. So then that is what it means, that he inherited the place. Zair Anpin at this point, metaphorically, has taken over the place of, maybe he's one with them, with Abba ve'imba. V'nikra zakein mamish, so he's now called an elder, mamish ve'ena b'chor, and he's no longer a child, or excuse me, a firstborn son. The v'sha'al of the bedregas chochma b'bina yonim and the crimes zakenim, because he came to that place, and that's the name that they're called. V'achar kach chozer od Zair Anpin, but then Zair Anpin comes back again. La'alos ba'erech Anpin, but this is not only is that the highest place that he reaches, but he also goes all the way up to the Zakan of Erech Anpin, which is a tremendously close level to the Ein Sof. Delay. It's later besod Tefillas Mincha Shabbos, so we have a whole drush over there about the Aliyah of Zair Anpin at the Mincha of Shabbos. So this isn't the place to get in to start dwelling on what's actually going on at that place. So from that place, that's as highest that Zair Anpin can reach. So this is ultimately where he's going to go. So listen, we can just do a little bit more. We have 1 more minute. So all of this. Minkat nusa rishon shebakulam ad sof tachlis gadlus achron v'liaso el yonah. So until ultimate reaches all of these highest places. Near mezecha b'pirkei avos, it's a reference in the Pirkei Avnos. B'mishnahs hu hoya omer, this mishnah ben chamesh shana the mikra. And he's no longer in the world. V'kol osam hamadrego, so all of these different levels, Zair Anpin, they all refer to the going up of Zair Anpin, the development of Zair Anpin, Madrega Rishona ad Madrega Achrona, and that's where we're going to stop. Okay, thank you so much for learning with me today. Deep into it, we have longer times for this week, and then next week, each week is going to get shorter, about 5 minutes. And so we'll see how deeply we can go into the inyanim of Pesach.